What is up, everybody, and welcome to the All-NBA show powered by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com/All-NBA. I'm your host, Adam Mares. I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, the host of Hoops Tonight over on The Volume. It's Jason Timpf. Timpf, you got your first snow in Colorado. You're officially a Coloradan.
Yeah, I was going to say, we had our week off. I haven't seen you in a couple weeks. It's very good to see you. And in that time since, we got absolutely dumped on down here in Littleton. Definitely a very big culture shock for me coming from Arizona. But I have to say, we text each other. This happens quite a bit. We text each other on Thursday in the afternoon, and we're like, oh, yeah, kind of a slow slate tonight. Like, let's think about these things that we're going to talk about. And then all of a sudden, we just end up with really entertaining basketball. And I was thinking about this morning, like, for how much we all complain about how long the NBA regular season is, and it is too long, and they probably should shorten it, and there is a lack of urgency sometimes, but it does provide a massive amount of moments over the course of those 6 months. And that's what keeps us junkies coming back to it every year in October, is it's just on any given night, you could get some crazy high-level hoops like you saw last night and end up with some highlights and some memories.
It's funny you say good game, though. I think we're going to talk Lakers-Raptors later on. That was a good game. Warriors-Sixers was not a good game. It just had a ridiculous finish to it. I mean, this was a 20-point blowout for a good portion of it that got fumbled at the very end. We're going to break that down and talk about what happened there. By the way, all four of those teams have something interesting going on with them, so it'll make for good conversation. Later on in the show, we're going to talk about Giannis. This whole thing right now about, is he going to get traded? Is he not? What's going to happen? But we're going to look at and just talk about, if he were, what are some of the pairings we would love to see? Not trying to make trades and actually go to the trade machine and do all this stuff, but just what would make for a compelling two-man core for a team around the NBA. I have a list. I know JT has a list. But let's start with some quick hitters. And, first thing, this is from a couple nights ago, but the Cavs lost 4 of 5, and Legs and I talked about them earlier in the week, and my take on them was, it's so early. They're missing so many guys. Let's just pump the brakes a little bit. But they're 13-10. They're 5-5 in their last 10. They're losing to some, right now it feels like they could lose to anybody because they're not healthy and they're just not in a rhythm. Are you concerned at all? This is a team we predicted to be the top of the East, or at least top 2. And here they are 20 games into the season, 23 games, and they're down on the 8 seed. Are you concerned about them?
So I am, in terms of their upside, because so much of their upside to me depends on Darius Garland and him being healthy and having that burst off the dribble to consistently compromise the defense. And one of the things I keep seeing with him is he's still faster than most NBA players, but he's not Darius Garland fast yet. And that hasn't come yet. That may be a while. That may be a few more weeks, maybe even a month or so before he gets back there. But I'm watching him and he's struggling to beat Toumani Camara off the dribble. And it's like, I know Toumani's a great defender, but he's an upright wing. That's a guy Darius should be able to completely beat off the dribble. A lot of the other stuff I'm not super worried about. Like Jared Allen's been out. He keeps getting these hand injuries, and that's obviously hurting their defense. It's also hurting their offense, as that release valve around the basket. Them being bad on offense has led to them being a bad transition defense, which has continued to hurt them there. A bunch of guys that can't shoot threes right now. DeAndre Hunter's gone cold. Teams are ignoring Lonzo Ball at the three-point line, and he can't make anything over there. So there's a certain amount of that kind of stuff that I think will rectify over the course of the season. Guys will shoot better. Jared Allen will eventually get healthy. They'll be better on the margins, and they'll be able to churn out more regular season wins. But none of this matters if Darius Garland can't get to his peak athletically and stay there. And he's just never shown the ability to do that over the course of his career. And so in a lot of ways, I was more optimistic about the Cavs than most after their loss because I knew it was just Garland's injury. But now I'm pessimistic because I'm like, maybe this is just what it's going to be like because he can't stay healthy.
We're seeing guys fall off a cliff, I feel, more frequently in today's NBA than before, especially these smaller guards where they just go from one level to several steps down and you wonder, okay, well, they're just injured, whatever, and it never comes back. Maybe he falls into that category. I don't think so. But the guy that I wonder and kind of have a hunch is the bigger impact piece, or I shouldn't say bigger, a sneaky huge impact piece is Max Strus. And you look at them right now, they're 22nd in the NBA in 3-point percentage. I love watching him play because when you have a bunch of creators on the team, like Mitchell and like a Garland, and you have somebody who just has that much gravity and is that smart off ball, it's not just that he shoots well and moves well, but he also swings the ball well. He gets the ball popping, and that creates extra advantages. I feel like he's a huge part of their identity last season, and not having him makes him a meaningfully different team. He's not back for a little bit, so maybe this is a real concern, but I think he's also a sneaky important missing piece.
Well, yeah, and every time you drop Strus out, you're putting in a shooter that teams are going to basically be willing to throw a late contest at and live with the results. So, like, it just fundamentally alters their spacing. I think Jared Allen, too, again, like, as that just kind of like short range release valve, a la the Isaiah Hartenstein, like little short floaters, short jump shots, like, they're missing a couple of key elements to their spacing principles. And then obviously at the point of attack, when you're not getting that dribble penetration from Garland that you're accustomed to getting, like it's weird. They haven't been good on offense. And that's just so unusual for a Cavs team that was so transcendently good on offense last year.
If you look at the 4 teams in the play-in, and I'll even add the Chicago Bulls who are outside of it. If you go Bulls, Bucks, Hawks, Cavs, Sixers, that like 5 sum of teams, which one of those do you think is most likely to climb out of that zone up into the upper echelon?
Bulls, Hawks, Bucks, Cavs, Sixers. Easily the Cavs. Easily for me.
Okay. So you're not too concerned then. That's like okay, they're banged up. There's some things going on, but they still have the potential to rise in the stadium. I mean, they're only 2 games out of the 2 seed. The East is still very bundled up. It's just I keep waiting, thinking, okay, it's going to come together. It's going to come together, and they keep losing.
Yeah, I guess that's the perfect way to put it. I'm not worried about them eventually working their way towards the top 4 seed, top 2 or 3 seed. I am worried about them having the playoff ceiling that I thought they would have when Darius Garland was healthy last year.
Well, here's another team that's on the opposite side of this in the other conference for me, and that's the San Antonio Spurs, who early in the year, Victor Wembanyama, they're off to this incredibly hot start. They don't have De'Aaron Fox. They're a little banged up other places. Then he goes out, Fox comes back, and they're a different version of themselves, like a completely different team, but also just as successful. And now you look up in the standings and you say, okay, they're 15-6. They have some very impressive wins under their belt. They're still rolling. And yet I get the feeling that we actually haven't seen their team yet because they're just 2 half versions of themselves. And it made me wonder, 15-6 is a good record. Is it possible the Spurs can come together and that the 2 versions of themselves are going to blend halfway through the season and they might actually be an elite team, not just a very good one?
Yeah, I think they are. This is I'm not ready to put them up with Denver or Houston yet, but I'd put them up in that tier with the Lakers as like a legitimate like upset threat for any Western Conference team in that second tier in the West. You know, this has been one of the teams that I've been most wrong about this year. They're just so much more talented down the roster than I thought they'd be, in large part because they've had some leaps from some key guys. Devin Vassell has been super good, and his shooting above the break has been a godsend for this team that's needed shooting. Keldon Johnson kind of felt like the odd man out over the last couple of years, and now he looks like a very important kind of athletic weapon driving the basket and rebounding. And, you know, ultimately what's been weird over the last couple of years is we haven't seen much of the Fox Wemby pairing. And to your point, they were winning in this Wemby construct.
Right.
And then if we remember that Warriors game, right? So Victor gets hurt in that game. And De'Aaron Fox was awful in that game. And like what down the stretch was a big part of why they lost, taking some bad pull-up jump shots. Steph ends up stealing that game. But after
was that his
point,
first game? Was that his first game back, or like it was one of his first ones?
I'm not 100% sure, but
yeah.
I think it was. But so then Wemby goes down, and De'Aaron's been incredible since then. He's been shooting the jump shot super well. The big thing with De'Aaron is like he is sneaky, one of the better like cross-court passers in the league. So when he has that basic dynamic of his dribble penetration combined with his pull-up jump shot, it's causing the defense to react. He's engaging the low man a ton in these actions, and he's getting that skip pass to the opposite corner consistently, which is breaking the defense. And if we go back to the Wemby version of the Spurs before the injury, when Wemby was facing all those double teams, they were struggling to get the ball across the court as the defense was loading up. That was something they were struggling with. So like what I look forward to is having this big athletic team that is scrappy on the perimeter, but also has the rim protection element of Wemby, but also has that breaking the defense at the point of attack element of De'Aaron Fox. And you put all of that together, and that to me looks like one of those legitimate upset chances in the West. And so I'm with you. Like, I think I certainly underrated them. I know many other folks did, but I think they're every bit as good as that second tier in the West with the Lakers and some of those other teams, and off of that OKC, Houston, Denver tier.
They're also young enough and new enough that they might have another identity that they can cultivate, which is part of why it sucks that Wemby went out so early when they were getting a role, because you wanted them to kind of start cultivating that now. But the fact that they were able to change course and not miss a beat is really impressive. A lot of teams can't do that. Oklahoma City is obviously the the poster child of being able to just put somebody else in and maintain pace. But the Spurs have kind of done that. And I am kind of excited. I'm excited, but terrified of the idea that San Antonio has this like superpower that none of us have seen. And sometimes in basketball, it's how good can you do a bunch of things, and it's how good can you do one or two things. Wemby is such a mismatch, like physically and all the things that he provides. Fox is one of those. I think Vassell has been shooting great in some of these big games, and he's a tough cover. They have some guys that are like problems in and of themselves before you talk about how all the pieces fit. And I'm just watching them. I'm just keeping my eye on them, because here they are as the 4 seed 2 months into the season at 15-6, and one of the rare examples of a team that hasn't seen their actual identity yet. Here's another question for you. We're in the month of December. It's the first week of December. I think if you were to go back over the first couple months, who are the most interesting teams? The Detroit Pistons are on that list. Toronto, or the Raptors, the Miami Heat have been on that list. The Lakers have been impressive so far. San Antonio. But if we look ahead to this next month of December, who do you think is going to be the most interesting team in terms of they have some storylines going on and you're very intrigued to see what happens over the next 4 weeks?
Yeah, so for me, the team I've got my eye on is the Boston Celtics. And there's several different reasons why I'm looking at this. They've done some interesting things with their lineup structure that I think is kind of an example of the daring that Joe Mazzulla has to try to find a way to win despite their limitations at the center position. So they've basically bailed on backup centers. It's Nimi Keita, and then they're going small. And he's been leaning on these forwards, Josh Minot, obviously Jordan Walsh. You're seeing these two guys essentially amount to these rangy 5-man fast driving kick lineups built around Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown's been doing a phenomenal job of methodically finding mismatches to attack, punishing them until they start sending extra attention. And then the big one to me that's super fascinating is this is a team in Boston that is the dead last defensive rebounding team in the NBA. They're literally the worst at it. And yet they are winning the second chance points battle on average on the season because they're doing such a wonderful job attacking the offensive glass. And one of the things that I noticed on film that I think is really interesting, because they're still technically giving up more offensive rebounds than they're getting, but many of their offensive rebounds are like putbacks. Like they're cutting out of the corner, and Jordan Walsh is just getting the ball and feeding it right back up into the basket, or Minot's getting
kind of his superpower. He's got such a nose for that exact one, almost like round the baseline, go up, and then it's to your point, it's a putback. It's like a tip back, and it's just like it's a weird thing, but it's a real skill he has.
Yeah, and it's part of their spacing because they have the floor all space, so there's these runways around the basket. Whereas when they're giving up offensive rebounds, they're giving them up to bigger players around the basket, and they're immediately swarming that dude. And so many of those are either ending up in missed putbacks, turnovers, or they kick the ball back out and have to run offense, and their defense has another chance to get a stop. And so in a weird way, despite being the dead last defensive rebounding team in the league, they're actually winning the second chance points battle on average every night and turning that into an advantage for them. And then the offense has just been off the chart. Their centerless looks, Adam, are like a 135 offensive rating this season. They're like absolutely frying teams when they space the floor like that.
I'm with you on Boston. They were number one on my list as well because they're 13-9. I want to say I was early on this. I was talking to producer James about this. Like last week, we were talking about Jordan Walsh. It was last week, I think. And I was like, we got to get something out quickly because I think everybody's going to start talking about this guy and the Celtics here coming up because you can see that again, this part of the year, you start to figure out what your identity is. Some teams come into it knowing, but a lot of teams like Boston who are in flux, have some injuries and stuff. They have to figure out what their identity is. And I look at them and I'm like, I think they know what their identity is. And they're smart and they're good and they can win. And Jordan Walsh, obviously a part of that to everybody's surprise, but they were on my list because I want to see now, was that just they have a new style, teams haven't adjusted yet, but once they adjust, there's not enough talent there? Or is this, hey, 13-9, the East looks like nobody has the crown. It's up for grabs, and here comes the Boston Celtics ready to contend for it. The other
and
team
what if Jason Tatum comes back? Like,
well, that's the whole
other
thing.
part of this too. If Tatum comes back, this becomes a very, very dynamic threat in an Eastern Conference where every other team has pretty significant flaws across the board.
And that's the whole point. Can they just be in position where that becomes inspiring, not reckless? Because there is a world where he comes back later on in the year, and you're like, what are you doing? There's no point. But they're making it look like maybe there's a point. Maybe there's a point. Come back. We have a shot here. The other team, well, there's a couple more, but the other team I want to talk about is the Orlando Magic. I sometimes refer to as my Orlando Magic. They are also 13-9. They are also 13-9 and have been playing some pretty good basketball. And tonight, Paolo Banchero cleared to play. So he is able to join. Of course, they had him early in the year. They were off to a rocky start, integrating Desmond Bane and just figuring out who they were. He goes down and they caught a rhythm. But of course, he brings an important talent to them. So this is it. To me, I look at it and I go, okay, he's back December 5th. There's been a lot of talk, including instigated by myself on this very show, about Paolo Banchero's fit on this team, not out of selfishness or any of this, but just does he fit? Is he the piece? They're on a run and they are within striking distance of the 2 seed, really of any seed they want. December to me is going to be a month where we look at it and say, all right, if they slide again, or if they don't climb in the standings, I think we're all going to start having the whisper. The whispers are going to turn into roars about, is this team building themselves the right way? But if it comes together, they have all the pieces to be a very good team, and they can climb in the standings up to 2 or even number 1.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep an open mind with them, with Paolo coming back, because they were 5-2 in their last 7 games before Paolo got hurt. So like, I don't love the way Paolo plays. He's not my favorite young star in the league. He can be infuriating to watch sometimes with his approach on offense. But they did start to turn some of these habits around in terms of their ball movement and their player movement, their assist percentage rising. A lot of that stuff started to happen before Paolo got hurt. Now, they've taken it to a more consistent level in the time since Paolo went out. And I do think that it'll be something to keep an eye on. Like if Paolo comes back and they start getting clunky and stagnant again, it's certainly something that you'd have to consider there. I'm not going to get into it right now, but we might be talking about Orlando again when we get into our Giannis segment later. But like when it comes to Paolo, like when he comes back, you know, he's going to be taking away minutes from guys like Tristan da Silva, who have been knocked down 3-point shooters for them. You know, there's a certain amount of like risk for that to go clunky, but ultimately he's one of the most talented players in the league, and you have to try to integrate him as best as you can and see if he can kind of fit back into the style the way that he's been playing. But I think that the Magic, to your point, have a clear identity now, which is they're defending and getting out. They're defending like they did last year, but they're getting out in transition more than ever before. They're experiencing some boosts in some key jump shooting areas down the roster. Obviously, guys like Anthony Black shooting better than they have been. Tristan da Silva knocking down catch and shoot threes. There's a lot of like positive trends, but the big one is when they get in the half court, they're moving the ball around a lot more. They're trusting each other. They're getting into their drive and kick sequences, and they're actually capitalizing on all of their talent. And then they're finally starting to pay off some of these sequences by hitting shots. And so they're a very dangerous team. To your question, I think even if Paolo comes back, and even if it is a little clunky at first, I don't see any scenario where they slip down off of that top grouping in the East. I think they're going to be one of the top teams in the East for the rest of the season.
Is there another team that you think is interesting in December, or particularly interesting? I have one more, but I'm curious if you have another one.
The other two that I wrote, one we already hit, which is I think the Spurs need to start being viewed as like a legitimate puncher's chance contender. The second one for me was, I know you and I were both, I was leaning slightly towards Denver before the season. I think you were as well, if I remember correctly. Should we start considering Oklahoma City as like a tier by themselves runaway favorite? That's the one thing where like I'm not quite there yet, but I've been saying this on my show. Like if we get to early January and they're 33-2 or 34-2 or whatever it is, like I'm going to be pretty strongly considering them on their own tier.
We talked about this on Wednesday. Legs and I did, and I'm there. I mean, part of this is, some of the other teams have more to figure out than they do. There's a continuity and they know who they are, but I think they're just better. I think they're actually just a better team. I think Shea's a better player. They do all the same stuff they did last year with the consistency of last year. And then you get marginal improvement from Shea of all people, as well as Chet and a handful of other guys. AJ Mitchell brings another player. So I do have them in their own tier. And I think I think everybody soon will be framing this entire season along the lines of just, can anybody compete with them, not just beat them in the playoffs, but can anybody compete with them? Are they kind of just a lot better than everyone else, in the margin for errors there? I still think the playoffs will be interesting, but I definitely have them in their own tier. I don't know if they're going to be interesting though in this month. I mean, if you want to,
that's fair. That's fair. I think it is a little interesting just with J-Dub coming back and their schedule gets tougher. So for instance, like I would certainly like to see another Lakers Thunder matchup at this point.
What's the most games you could see them losing this month though? Like this is like how interesting is it?
Yeah,
2. All right. So we're
fair.
asking if they're going to lose 0, 1, or 2 games this month.
I do like the way you framed it though, like that second tier now is like can you even compete with OKC?
Yeah.
It's like,
you get on
and that
level?
tier is now Denver and Houston, and like we're the guys that are currently meeting the bouncer at the front of the club are like the Lakers and the Spurs, but like ultimately it's like, can you even compete with the Thunder?
They're the only team that shows us who they are every single night. And every other team has their nights where you're like, I don't know who this team is. All right. The last team I had that's most interesting in December, against all odds, are the Dallas Mavericks. They've won 3 games in a row. They're up to 8-15. They beat the Clippers. Okay, you can say what you want, but it's still, you have to beat that team. They beat the Nuggets in Denver. They just beat the Miami Heat, who are a tough out. And Cooper Flag, it's all these narratives get set in the first week or 2 of the season, and then they carry for like 2 more months. Cooper Flag, obviously the point guard experiment, struggle a little bit. His last 3 games, 22 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal and a block, 24, 8, 2, 2, and 1, 35, 8, 2. He is starting to score. He's starting to look physically imposing. He's starting to show that like it factor, and they getting a little bit healthier. They're not going to be a contender. They're not going to be any of this stuff, but all of a sudden they're just a legitimate team that it can beat anybody on any given night. And I don't know if that's a 3-game thing or if that's going to be a month of December thing, but I'm kind of intrigued to find out.
Yeah, I have really enjoyed watching the Mavs over this last week. They've played a really fun brand of basketball. First of all, like Anthony Davis has been a frustrating player for me to root for over the years because of the stuff with his conditioning. And I'm so sick of that dance every year where he comes into camp out of shape and then gets hurt because he can't handle NBA basketball. And then it's like the race, will he get in shape before his body breaks down? And like sometimes he does and sometimes he doesn't.
I know
but
that one well.
When he's healthy and on the floor, he's so good. Like he went toe-to-toe with Jokic in that game. He went toe-to-toe with Bam in the Miami Heat game. He dominated the Heat game down the stretch, drawing double teams out of the post. The big thing with the Cooper Flag piece is I think the rise of Ryan Nembhard has essentially allowed him to stop handling the ball so much and then just focus on scoring and attacking. He obviously they tried D'Lo, it didn't work. They tried Brandon Williams, it didn't work. Ryan Nembhard has brought the combination of scoring in pick and roll and playmaking in pick and roll. There's been like a little bit of each with D'Lo and Brandon that hasn't ever materialized into anything consistent. But Ryan is being a very dependable pick and roll creator. That's allowing Cooper Flag to essentially focus on just attacking off the catch over and over again. And one of the things that I think has helped him a lot is he's cut way down on his 3-point attempts, and he's getting closer to the basket for short range jump shots. And when he gets there, he's actually been very efficient. In this 3-game winning streak, he's 8 for 11 on jump shots inside of 17 feet, which is a very easy shot for him to get to as a tall, wing. And he's finishing at the rim at a high rate. Klay Thompson, I don't know if it was the Ja Morant thing or what, but ever since that game, he's been hooping his ass off. Like they just got a basketball team that's full of a lot of talent. And the Ryan Nembhard piece and the Anthony Davis piece Anthony Davis is the indomitable superstar force that can go toe-to-toe with the best players in the league. And then Ryan Nembhard as a steadying ball handler has balanced out everything for them, and now they look like a real basketball team.
It's always crazy when a young guy like Ryan Nembhard just looks like a veteran in terms of calmness. That guy's so calm on the court. He's not rattled. He has like a deadpan face on him at all times, just almost like he's bored, but he's just not rattled at all by these tough plays. And then he just is really, really smart. Has an incredible feel for where to deliver the passes, and he's been fun to watch. And Dallas might be good. I mean, I'm not saying they're great, but they just might be a team that you're not surprised when they beat a Denver or a Houston or a Detroit. They get a win. You're not surprised by it, and they're finding their own identity. Like we just talked about, if you watch them in game opening night, first couple games of the year, and then you watch them now, they're not at all the same team. And I think that's what makes them interesting for December. All right, the last thing,
if Anthony Davis stays healthy, that they could easily crawl back into the playoff picture and be more of a team that stays pat rather than looks to make a trade. But the question is, should they just capitalize on AD's trade value? That's the real question.
That is the real question. And Nembhard maybe makes you feel like you have a little bit more of a young core. Sometimes it's hard when you don't have that many guys. Lively, obviously, right now is a bare mystery with his health. So you don't have that many guys. Maybe you look at Nembhard and say, hey, there's a little bit of building blocks here. Let's see what we do. The last thing I want to talk about, Jamal Murray on Wednesday night went for 52 points in one of those games where one of the things that makes Jamal Murray unique, he doesn't always play like a superstar, but only superstars have the ability to get red hot the way he does as often as he does. And when he gets hot, it's like that game, he took 9 or 10 straight heat checks. And there's nothing more fun than when a player is on a heat check, like a heat check, you think of 1 or 2, maybe 3. And you're like, man, he took 3 heat checks and made them all. Jamal took like 10 in a row and just kept making them. And you watch it and you're just like, my God, the entire second half is a heat check. And it made me think about how whatever you think of Jamal Murray, he's underrated as a highlight guy. And in particular, a single game highlight. Like when he is on one, he is almost as fun as anybody in the league to watch when he is on one. So if you just went and watched his highlights on good games, you think about the bubble, you think about some of the big playoff games, he is just unbelievable to watch when he gets in that zone. So we are going to have some fun. I want to chat.
Can I take a quick victory lap on Jamal Murray?
A victory lap, sure. Let me hear it.
Okay, I said that he was the 25th best player in the NBA this year in my player rankings and got absolutely slandered. And my specific take was, I think this guy is going to come into camp in better shape than he's ever come in because he believes in this team's chances to win a championship. He's now averaging 25, 5, and 7 on 63% true shooting. I think he's been clearly one of the 25 best players in the league this year. I want my victory lap.
Okay, well, there you go. I will say this. Did he not think that in the last 2 years when they were defending champs? And then, last year when they took OKC to 7?
Your frustrations are valid. I will say that.
I'm just saying your belief of why he came into camp in this shape. I don't think it's because he thought the team could contend. They could have contended the last 2 years if he would have done it. But I digress. Anyway, I thought it would be fun if we ranked, and actually not ranked. We snake draft, as we like to do on the show. We snake draft players who have the best single game highlight reel. So if you heard they had a big night in the league, whose highlight reel are you going to first when you hear that they had a big night? And because I'm such a gentleman, actually, first of all, let me set the rules. Current players in this season, and the one caveat is Kyrie and Jason Tatum are eligible. Not because they have to play injured. Let's pretend they're not injured, but they're at the level that they are given their age. So LeBron, you're talking about LeBron this year's highlight, not LeBron at his absolute apex. LeBron this year, they had a great one. And then Kyrie, Tatum, you can pretend those guys are healthy and they could be on the list. With that,
I think it was very kind of you. I know you and I both respect Jason Tatum as a basketball player, but I think it was very kind of you to include him on this list because I doubt he's going to get picked.
He's not on my list. You're right. So you are correct about that, but he is fun. Let's not do that. All right. You get to have the first pick, snake draft edition. And I actually think there's a clear and obvious first pick, but I'm curious if you agree.
Anthony Edwards. Is that what you're thinking?
No. Is that really your first pick is Anthony Edwards? It's a good one.
When Anthony has a 45, 50-point game, you're guaranteed to have 3 or 4 ridiculous step-back threes over great contests, a couple of wild mid-range fadeaways that are MJ-esque, usually 1 or 2 wild dunks, and then a couple of these like MJ-esque up and under finishes in traffic through three bodies. Like, to me, Anthony Edwards is like the peak highlight show in the NBA right now, because he's just this crazy combination of power, speed, and shot making. To your point about Jamal, why is Jamal going to get considered on a list like this? Shot making is still one of the most
Yep.
entertaining things to watch in basketball.
Agreed.
And Ant brings the athleticism and the shot making to the table.
I think you're right. So you think about, what do people like in highlight reels? And by the way, everybody's different here. This is why this list can't be correct. It's everybody's individual list. But you can have, like, in-game dunking is a big part of this. So you're a great in-game dunker. That's going to make for a great highlight reel. 3-point shooting or the ability to get hot. Anthony Edwards is super high on my list. I think I had him 4, and the top 4 are like a lock to me. But his body control is just fun to watch. And when his shot is falling, it just feels like, I mean, he's the closest to MJ in terms of just the body control and the stuff he can do on a court. So I think it's a good pick, but I think it's an insane first pick, because there's an obvious first pick here in the NBA, in my opinion, and that's Steph Curry. Steph Curry is still on it. Steph Curry on a heater, to me, is still the best show in basketball. When he gets going, it's just the most fun thing you can watch. You talk about Jamal Murray getting hot and he doesn't miss. Steph Curry's not even looking at the rim by the time he's letting go of the basketball when he's in the zone. And to me, I'd be surprised if people find this a hot take, because to me, Steph Curry is still the best show. When he's on, he's still the best show in the NBA.
I had Steph 2, and I think this is a great pick, because I would argue that if I was extending this conversation out to like this era of basketball, it's clearly Steph number 1. And if you go back to like 2021, there was a stretch there in the springtime where he was must-see television every single night, because he was going off for like 37, 42. At like any given night, he was just going on these crazy 5-6 3-point quarters over and over and over again. And during his prime, he very much was. So I agree in principle. It's just more like at this phase of his career,
You don't think he has it in him? Yeah.
It's a little bit rare, you know, and honestly, Steph's been
rare.
great this year, and Steph's had some wild heaters this year. I think it's a great pick. I had him number 2.
All right, so I get another pick here, and of course, I'm going to be the most biased person on earth. There's still, to me, the only person more fun than Jokic is Steph Curry. Steph Curry on a heater is more fun, but Jokic, to me, for one, he has these great highlight reels almost every single night. Say whatever you will about him, he still puts up something he does in every single game that is worth watching. He is like Larry Bird, one of the all-time best highlight reel guys. Like, you go and watch Larry Bird's best passes or whatever, it's a great reel. Jokic, to me, you get some incredible shot making because he just shoots everything off of these weird off balance or whatever. And then his passes, it's just on any given night, he has 1, maybe 2 passes that are highlight worthy. And there's some nights where he has 6 or 7. So to me, I love passing. I'm a little biased here because he's obviously my player, but I think Jokic, I have Steph and Jokic. I feel so good about my list going forward.
I had Jokic at 4, so very good pick. Similarly, to me, the thing with Jokic is it's less on the highlights. There are highlights there. Like he'll hit, like, one of my favorite highlights he had is that like triple pivot post move over Rudy Gobert in Game 5 of the 2024 semifinals, if I remember correctly, or like his step back 3 against OKC in Game 5 on the road. Like, he'll have these crazy highlights, but to me, the appeal with Nikola Jokic, where I'd argue he's like number 1 or number 2. And by the way, I give Steph this credit too, is like beyond even their great games, they're just really fun to watch their team play basketball. Their team plays a brand of offensive basketball around their offensive creation that is just a very aesthetically appealing brand of basketball. So like I have Jokic at 4. Do think that's a great pick. To me, the clear next one is Victor Wembanyama. And for me with him, I think his game against Anthony Davis to start the season might actually be the greatest single game highlight reel I've ever seen. It's these straight up alien, like WTF defensive plays that happen 2 or 3 times a game. It's the dunks when you don't even conceive of a human being able to dunk. I'm going to hit 6 dribble combinations into a step back 3 against the center out in the open floor. He's sneaky, like he'll throw 1 or 2 like crazy passes that you don't see a big man of his ilk throw in a game. I think Victor, he's got to become more consistent with it, but in order to get into these lists with the top guys that we've mentioned, but he might have the best single game highlight reel I've ever seen in that Mavericks game.
The absurd plays are really high for him. I mean, Jokic has a bunch of things that are absurd. Like when you watch it, you're like, that's absurd. But Wemby, even more so, just plays where you're like, what? What just happened? What did
Mhm.
he do? So I think he'd be on here. I think you have another great pick coming up. Picking 1, 3, and 5 is actually sneaky great here. Or 1, 4, and 5 is sneaky great here if you take the guy, I think.
This is a tough one. I think I'm going to go with Luka.
Yeah, that was the guy. That
Now,
was the guy I had.
the,
My top 5 is
the
gone
case
now.
the case here with Luka, because this is kind of the opposite of the Jokic conversation that I was just having. I was really curious as someone who roots for Luka now, if my opinion of him would change based on what it was like when I was watching him during the Dallas Mavericks years. There is a brute force dominance to the way that Luka plays, and you can get some pretty insane highlight reels. My favorite two examples are obviously Game 5 versus the Minnesota Timberwolves, 2024 Western Conference Finals. Was it 7 against Phoenix in 2022? And where like he'll come out the gates and he'll just execute a team with shot making.
Yeah.
But overall, there's like a heliocentric style with Luka that I don't think is a very aesthetically appealing brand of
That
basketball.
doesn't show
And
up on highlights, though.
it does show up on highlights. That's fair, and I feel like it's worth mentioning
I
as
was
someone
saying it
who's now
doesn't show up
rooted.
on highlights. You're just watching the place end, so it's like it looks great.
Yeah, and so as someone who's now rooted for Luka, and he's played in what I think 16 games for the Lakers so far this year, like I have an unbelievable respect for his talent having rooted for him, but I continue to find it to be a pretty rough style of basketball to watch. And so I think that's at least worth mentioning. But when you have those crazy Luka games, there's like he had a jab step, triple jab step 3 versus Klay Thompson in the Mavericks game where he was wide open, caught like a wide open catch and shoot 3, let Klay close out, and then like jabbed like 4 times in 4 different directions and just hit a shot in his face. He'll hit like 3 or 4 of the craziest step back threes you've ever seen. His touch on like one-handed little push shots and floaters is insane. There is a certain level of highlight material with Luka that is tough to compete with around the league.
You get a little bit of everything. You get the absurd passing, which is like everybody's going to have something they value a little bit differently. For some people, it's going to be dunkers, handle whatever. But for me, it's passing. And so with Luka, you're always going to get a couple passes that are just like ridiculous or silly. And I love when guys manipulate the game in a way that it's just so easy. All right, so now back to me. A little bit of a controversial one, and you could probably tell by the way I set up the rules for this where I was going to go with it. But I'm going to put Kyrie on my list next. His handle, like he's the NBA's artist. And obviously he's hurt right now, but he still does things that are insane. He had a left-handed game-winning jump shot against the Nuggets a year ago. He has the best handles of all time, and he uses them on a nightly basis to do something spectacular. He can make any type of shot, and his game is just so fundamentally sound in terms of, his shot is balanced. His footwork is perfect. When he's on a heater, his highlight reel is like, you could teach the game of basketball from it, especially from a one-on-one standpoint. You can slow it down and say, here's how you do these complex moves. So Kyrie Irving to me is up there.
Yeah, I love this pick. All I'm gonna do is just share one of my favorite Kyrie highlights. Game 7 of the 2016 NBA Finals. He gets a rebound in the open floor, and he throws this push ahead dribble. And again, all I could think about is like, this is game 7 of the finals in the second half. And like he whips out this push ahead dribble that he puts so much spin on that if you watch it, he throws it and it's at this wicked angle to the ground. But when it hits the ground, it pops straight back up in the air because of how much spin he puts on the ball. Catches up to it because he used that push ahead dribble to get out of traffic so he could sprint up to the ball. Gets it, gathers, and goes into this crazy left-handed finish that goes way high off the top left corner of the backboard and spins in for an and one. And it's like one of the most ridiculous displays of skill that I've ever seen in a pivotal NBA Finals game. I think you could make the case that he's the most aesthetically appealing, like dribble pull-up shooter in the history of the game. I love this pick.
I think so too. And you've just pointed out something that we talked about, all these micro skills or whatever that make for good highlights. Finishing, like complex finishing to me is fun to watch. And he's right up there with the best of them. I got another pick here, and it's tough because I don't have a clear next one for me.
This is where we get weird. It's
This
after
is where
this,
we get.
it's all
It's
personal
personal
preference, I think.
taste. Yeah, it's personal preference. Let me go. God, I don't feel good about any of these. I'm going to go with a really wild pick that I'm going to get killed for because he hasn't had a highlight reel that I've watched in the last, I don't know, year. But it's theoretically possible, and that's Zion. I'm still going to go with
Okay.
Zion Williamson.
I don't hate it.
I think he's hasn't been these games that you're like, I have to go watch the highlights, but I do feel like he's still capable of it and could have one. And when he does have one of those nights, he's just so fun to watch. Nobody dunks like he does in the history of the game. There's been guys that have been maybe on the same scale of him, but several steps down. The speed, the power, and the size, it's just so unique. And he has some of these nights where he gets 3 or 4 of them in a single game that all could make the career best dunks of any of big time players in the NBA. And then on top of that, we talk about finishing. He has a nice touch. He has like some stuff around the basket that is fun to watch. So I'm going to go with Zion. His dunks are in a category all their own, but he hasn't been good.
I think this is a great pick. It's just the thing with Zion is just becoming so sad to me. He's reached the peak level of sadness with a superstar. It's kind of like where Brandon Ingram was last year, where it's like, okay, this guy's going to get traded most likely, but like you can't even think of a fun place for him to go because like nothing really makes a lot of sense. And the dude just can't stay healthy as he's got this, what is it, an oblique injury he has now? Like he just keeps having different things that get him out of the game. So like, it's just, I love the pick. Zion has just become a sad story, man.
It's like a theoretical pick. I'm picking on what he could be, not what we've seen him do in a while. But I think it's still
this is a tough one. I'm going to go legacy here, though, and I'm going to go with Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
And my case for this here is Kevin Durant will just have these games where the shot making is so incredibly smooth looking from all over the floor that there's like a level of flow that Kevin Durant hits on his like super hot nights that is like just really impressive as for anybody who's ever played the game in terms of just understanding how difficult that is from a skill development perspective. And I know he's tall and that he's got the size advantage, but there's just like a flow and a prettiness to Kevin Durant's high level shot making games that I've always enjoyed.
I think that one's fair. I mean, he gets a lot of buckets. He has some incredible stuff, spectacular. I'm not a guy I'm like racing to watch his highlights all the time though. And I was thinking about this, like who have I actually like put in the search bar and gone to lately? And he hasn't been one of them, and part of it's because he's consistently great. A lot of his highlight mixes look the same. Like it's like, oh, he did this thing again tonight, but I get it. Yeah. What else? Round it out. This is tough.
This last one's really tough for me. I'm going to go with Tyrese Maxey. And
the chat was calling
take
for him.
Here is like you have the shot making piece that always is so much fun to watch. And the level to which he can hit off the dribble threes is just wild. You can just tell he just picked up so much of that footwork from James Harden, and he's just so much faster that he can get even more separation. But what he also brings is just the jaw-dropping speed. And I mean, his highlight last night, the block of DeAnthony Melton in transition, is legitimately one of the better defensive highlights I've ever seen. He was tied up in his bench after taking a jump shot and just sprints the length of the floor and swats him off the glass. Like really a dynamic speed athlete that I think draws another, kind of aesthetic element into the equation.
Yeah, I think that's a good one for sure. The speed, we're going to talk about that play. The speed is an angle on this, the quickness, and he's also always in attack mode. So when he has highlight reels, it's like it's just attack. So I think he belongs up here. I'm going to round it out with who we started with and say Jamal Murray. Yeah, when he gets hot, if you think about like the bubble highlights, I know they're a long time ago, but that highlight reel alone is among the best individual playoff run highlight reels because he had so many big time games. And as we mentioned, he's not particularly quick like a Tyrese Maxey or some of these other guys. And as a result, he has to rely on footwork and craft and crossovers and step backs. So when he's on a heater, all of his buckets come off of shaking a guy. So when he gets a highlight reel, it's because he had 15 buckets, and that means 15 times he had to cross somebody over, step back, and hit a three. And so I'm going to put him on the list. That's how we started the show. So bring it up here, James. Let's see here. I like my list a lot. I'm not going to lie. I like my Steph, Jokic, Kyrie I love that top three. It gets a little controversial after that, but I feel good about this. We're going to put it on social media. I think I'm going to dominate, JT.
Ant at 4. I expected more out of you, Adam.
Let's take our first break. On the other side, we're going to break down these games, and then we're going to end the show by talking about destinations for Giannis. We'll do that on the other side. But first, NBA season full swing. FanDuel is your home for live betting. So even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. However you want to play, now is the perfect time to join because FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/AllNBA to sign up today. Play your game with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Must be 21 or older and present in select states. For Kansas in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present in D.C. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. This Christmas season, you can give the gift that keeps on giving. That is, of course, Shady Rays, because they have phenomenal selection of sunglasses, every type of sunglass you could possibly want, but it comes with a caveat. If you lose the pair of Shady Rays that you have purchased or break them, even if it's on day one, they're going to send you a replacement pair. That's why I say it's the gift that keeps on giving. You're buying a pair of sunglasses that you don't have to worry about. They will come back to you if something happens to them. It's an incredible deal, and they have seriously good-looking, polarized, durable, and not stupidly expensive sunglasses in every single type. They even have ski and snowboarding goggles. If you're trying to be outdoors, they have outdoors sunglasses for you, active wear. So they have all different types of stuff for you to purchase up there. And like I said, they have that guarantee that if you break them or lose them, they will send you a replacement pair. Shady Rays is eyewear that has your back. We've teamed up with Shady Rays to bring you an exclusive offer. Head to shadyrays.com and use the code AC35 for 35% off your polarized sunglasses. Try it for yourself. The Shades, rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. All right, back here, segment 2 of the All-NBA show. I'm with Jason Timpf. He is the host of Hoops Tonight over on The Volume. You can check that out. Let's get into the games that happened last night really quickly, because we'll probably burn through these pretty quickly. But the Lakers beat the Raptors 123-120. It was a good game. Raptors were trailing by quite a bit, 18-point lead. Or I'm sorry, they were trailing by quite a bit at one point here. They come back in this game. It got close down the stretch, but LeBron James, who failed to score 10 points for the first time in 2 decades, which is an insane, maybe the most untouchable record in the NBA. Most guys don't even play as many games in their entire career as LeBron has with this stretch. So you talk about Kareem's scoring record. We thought that would never be touched. LeBron's 10-point scored record, well, I think that is going to become one of the most unbreakable records in the NBA. But he doesn't get it because at the very end of the game, he kicks it out to Rui Hachimura, who drains the 3 to give them the go-ahead win. What did you think about this game?
Yeah, first of all, I want to shout out Scotty Barnes because LeBron was trying to score and he needed to. It was funny coming into this game. I haven't been worried about LeBron at all. He's clearly way behind in his ramp up for obvious reasons. Guys, last year he was healthy for all of training camp and he was bad for the first month. So this is a 40-year-old. It's going to take him months to get his feet underneath him. I think he's probably a month away at least from being ready for these types of games where they really need him to score the basketball. Yeah. And he had no choice.
Let me stop you there. Hold on. Let me stop you there because I want to ask you, and you're watching this team even more closely than I am, because that's one angle to take. It's going to be a slow ramp-up period. Another one is maybe maybe it's just not possible. His age is going to catch up with him, and he just looks slow. He does look old. And part of me wondered if it's hey, he had a couple good games early on, but maybe he just can't do this for 82 games, and you already see what this NBA schedule does to a 40-year-old body.
So I'm not going to sit here and pretend that's out of the realm of possibility. It certainly is. But I personally would be stunned, barring injury, that he doesn't get much better over the course of the season. I think
much better.
There's a certain amount of he's not just slower. He's clearly out of shape and working his way back into basketball condition. He's only been playing 5-on-5 for a couple of weeks. There's very little in terms of rhythm with his handle and his jump shot. That will inevitably come back. Like, will he be the same, MVP candidate that he was in January and February last year? I don't know that he'll ever get to that level again, but I think LeBron's going to be fine. The point is that he wasn't ready for that last night, and he had to be under the circumstances. And I want to give Scotty Barnes credit because he refused to switch off of LeBron in action. That was the big story of the game defensively, is any screening action, whether LeBron was the screener or the handler, Scotty was staying home. And he deserves credit for being the first player in over 1,200 games to be physically capable of stopping LeBron from getting to 10 points. Because, again, he took 17 shots. He was trying to score the basketball. One thing I will say, though, it was kind of a fun old man LeBron game because even though he couldn't make a jump shot to save his life and he couldn't finish at the rim, he had 0 turnovers and made all sorts of little offensive plays that helped his team win. He burned the Raptors for helping off the corner multiple times for threes, 2 for Jake LaRavia, 1 for Dalton Connect. He was running inverted action with Austin and hitting him for layups, slipping out of screens. A lot of plays in 4-on-3s, 1 for a dunk to DeAndre Ayton on a lob, another one for a dunk as he hit Jackson Hayes cutting down the middle, and then the game winner, the play on that play. And I think the coolest part about it is LeBron and Rui both talked after the game about how LeBron diagnosed that play before it happened. He basically went up to Rui and was like, Austin's going to get doubled. I want you to be in the left corner because I'm going to hit you. He basically told Rui what was going to happen, diagnosed the play, made the read, made the pass on time, on target, rifled it right into his shooting pocket to beat the rotation and knocked it down. Honestly, just like one of those like cool moments that just personifies LeBron's career in a lot of ways, is just a guy who's willing to do whatever it takes to win basketball games.
Yeah, it was a great play. I'm going to be a bit of a hater just because the entire timeline has been raving over the past, but it was a great play. And I like the note about him coming to Rui before. I hadn't heard that. So that's a cool one about saying, hey, I know exactly how this is going to unfold. Be ready for it. It happens. And it was impressive. You mentioned though, him short rolling off of pick and rolls. I have felt 10 years ago, I remember thinking LeBron, and we talked about this, but LeBron, they had a season with the Cavs where he had like 12 total possessions as the roll man on pick and rolls. And I think they scored on every single one. And I remember kept thinking, why wouldn't he alter his game to do this just a little bit more? There's nothing like, and now the game has evolved in a way where I think there was the sense of like low skill players set the screen and roll. And so high skill players don't do it. Maybe didn't want to do it, but I'm like, he could be the greatest short roller of all time. Honestly, he's such a good player coming downhill. And he had some, to your point, in the fourth quarter when their offense was getting a little bit stuck. And it's like, yeah, man, that's such an elite option for the Lakers, because who is going to be able to rotate over and make that play when it gets 4-on-3 when LeBron is the guy going downhill? And I wonder if that's your point about, can he do all of the stuff? Maybe there's a chance not, but he can do this passing and playmaking. And one of the ways to get a player that is slower to make plays on the pass is to use them as screeners and roll, because you don't have to be going full speed in that environment.
Yeah, that was one of my big gripes from last night. Is like, I was like, man, I don't like LeBron trying to work off of a live dribble 30 feet from the basket anymore. I just don't think that that's really a good spot for him. Now, again, part of that, credit Scotty Barnes, because he just wasn't conceding the types of switches that LeBron would be able to post. And that's, because that's the other thing. You mentioned the rolls. Also, the post is a great spot for LeBron to work. And he's done a lot of work there to start this season, because that's where he can protect the basketball and use his size and strength and IQ rather than having to beat people off the dribble with foot speed. But yeah, I mean, that what you're emphasizing, that's a big part of why LeBron and Austin have been such a good natural fit. And by the way, LeBron-Austin lineups have been crushing the league over the last couple of years. And a big part of that is they're really difficult to guard in action, because if Austin's inverted, LeBron can hit him slipping all day long. And if Austin's on the ball, LeBron can work in the pocket where he can be really dangerous. And I just thought it was a really nice win for the Lakers, being down Luka Doncic against a very good Toronto Raptors team on the road. And there's good vibes in Lakerland, Adam. They're a half game back of the second best record in the NBA. They're playing good basketball.
Yeah,
by the way, clutch defense, last note, 78 defensive rating in the clutch against Toronto. They continue to be a great clutch defense as they're 7-0 in clutch games. And DeAndre Ayton, dude, switching on to Brandon Ingram and getting the big stop.
Yeah, he had a good game. He looked good last night. I thought DeAndre Ayton looked really good. So, credit to them. And that's a win without Luka, to your point, on the road against my Toronto Raptors. That's a very good win. I got a lot of teams this year. I got everybody. Let's go to the other one real quick, which this was the game I said was not a good game. The Warriors had no business. Is it the second game in a row or 2 out of 3? I can't remember if they played a game in between this where they're basically the game is over. Draymond leaves the game. Once it was for foul trouble, this time it was for injury. He leaves the game. They're down 20 points. But perhaps they should stop playing through Steph Curry. He wasn't in this game. Stop playing through Jimmy Butler. Also not in this game. Stop playing through Draymond Green and start playing through Pat Spencer. This is the guy, man. He's had a couple runs here when the team is in a no-hope situation. He had 16 points and was a plus 17 in a 1-point loss. But I don't really know what to make of this because the 76ers just dominated the game. And then there was like a 4-minute stretch where the Warriors did this improbable thing where they came back, took the lead, and actually probably should have won. They couldn't get an inbounds at the end of the game. It gave the Sixers another opportunity. But I don't know what to make of this game. This would have been the worst loss of the year for the Sixers if they would have lost it, but they ended up holding on.
Yeah, so the Warriors ended up running like a little 1-3-1 zone in that fourth quarter run, and they definitely were defending well, but there was also this bizarre sequence where Tyrese and Quentin Grimes were just running really bad offensive possessions, just kind of dribbling the clock out and taking bad pull-up jump shots, and there was no movement, and they were kind of feeding into the Warriors' attack. And what's been kind of interesting with the Warriors, I was actually thinking about this on my show this morning, like they're middle tier young guys, the guys that are like first round picks, the Pajemski, Kuminga types have just been such disappointments this year, but their end of the rotation guys have all been really, really good. And like, Pat Spencer, you mentioned him. He's just got the audaciousness. Like he's got this confidence where he'll take a big step back three or pull up three or a big contested shot or try to put the ball on the floor to score. And that's been a big kind of boost for them at the end of those games. And then everyone else is just solid. Like Guy Santos just hitting catch and shoot threes and making quick little moves on the baseline. Quentin Post hitting threes. I thought, DeAnthony Melton, he ended up having to do a little too much off the dribble down the stretch, which ended up being an issue. And that's where you kind of wish you had your guys. But like DeAnthony Melton his athleticism pops on defense as he made some big plays down the stretch. They're like one of those teams where like if they could just figure out what to do with that middle grouping, that Pods Kuminga group, and turn them into some scoring pop. Because ultimately the Warriors this year, once again, Adam, to your points about Steph Curry, 119.3 offensive rating when Steph is on the floor this year, according to Cleaning the Glass. So elite offense when Steph is on, just completely falls off of a cliff when Steph is off. A 108 offensive rating. Even with Jimmy on the floor, they haven't been able to score when Steph is off, and they just need to find some sort of consistent offense. But I thought it was one of the coolest moments of Tyrese Maxey's career, a big defensive play. He's been a little disappointing to me on defense this season. He keeps getting back cut and keeps giving up offensive rebounds. He ended up losing Buddy Hield on a big one in the fourth quarter. Cost him a game a couple nights ago. They're a frustrating to watch defensive team, but I thought that was a big moment for Tyrese getting back into the picture to block that off the glass.
It was an unbelievable block. Real quick, the Warriors went with the rare 14-man rotation yesterday. Everybody played. You don't see the 14-man rotation too often, so that shows you kind of where they're at. But yes, let's go back to the Sixers here because this is Maxey's team. Our guys over at PHLY Sixers, a great Sixers show. If you guys aren't watching, I was talking to them yesterday, and it really truly is like it's not this awkward thing like whose team it is. It's just Tyrese Maxey's team now, and everybody kind of understands that. And as you're starting to get some guys together, this should have been a vibey win. This should have been a 20-point win where we're talking about, man, the Sixers look good, and Embiid is playing off Maxey now and doing some stuff. They blew it, so the story now is Maxey's heroic block down the stretch. But I wanted to put them on my most interesting teams list of December too. I kept them off just because I want to see a little bit more before I put them there. But this is like a big stretch for them as well, and just how much they can figure out who they are around their big three. But it's really around Maxey and how everybody plays off of him. Where are you at with that? And do you think that they have an opportunity to kind of reinvent themselves around him in this next month?
So I think it's a really exciting time to be a Sixers fan because I think Tyrese is like a legit star. Like I think what he's doing is real. I've been kind of waiting for this pop for a couple years from him because I've been such a big believer in his skill set. I think that when you've got a real counter to your supreme gift, that you become a big problem. Like for Jokic, just take Jokic for example. There's this power game that he has, but it's when he's got his jump shot where he can counter it that it makes him like unstoppable, right? And with Tyrese Maxey, he's always been one of the fastest players in the league, but he's just become such a gifted jump shooter. And for those couple of years there, he was really good off the catch, but he just couldn't put it together off the dribble. Off the dribble, it was just a little too inconsistent. He'd have flashes like that one big playoff game where I think he had 50, but there's like a little bit of an inconsistency with his pull-up jump shot. This year, it's all come together finally, and now he has it all. It's the downhill attack that no one can stop, the floater in the mid-range when he gets stopped before the rim. He's improved as a playmaker, just making simple reads out of his drives. The step-back three is like absolutely lethal now. I really like VJ Edgecombe, again, the game winner last night, basically cutting in on that air ball from Tyrese to put it back in. Also made a couple of big plays on the margins down the stretch of that game. I just don't believe in this Sixers team as much as I did to start the year because of how bad they are defensively. And I think it's a bad combination of having some bad defensive personnel, being slow in the front court, and having some guys that are pretty undisciplined that make a lot of defensive mistakes. And Tyrese, I think, falls into that category as well. And I think that's difficult to overcome. So things are good for Sixers fans. They're fun. They have a bright future. Tyrese and VJ are going to be an excellent backcourt for the future, but I don't really take them seriously as a threat in the East at all this year.
I think I'm in the same bucket with you, and for a lot of the same reasons. I think the fun story, but I kind of predict them to be where they are, kind of hang around where they are. Let's go to our last topic here. We're going a little long. We always talk forever, you and I, JT. We're just hoop heads, man. We just talking hoops. Giannis pairings. I hate doing these types of things because as a fan of a small market team, I don't love the superstar, oh, let's try to trade him somewhere else. But it does feel like there's a little momentum with this one. I mean, I know we've been talking about Giannis trades for several years. Some of that is of his own making. You know, he's opened the door to that conversation a handful of times with some of his comments. But this time it does feel a little bit real. And if you were to see him go somewhere else, I thought we could make a list of some pairings. Again, forget realistic trade scenarios, everything else. Just if you could put these two players together, it would be something you'd be very intrigued to see. How would you start out your list there?
Okay, so I don't think this is going to happen because I think Jalen Johnson has become so good that Atlanta will basically stick with their existing core. I think there's a version of this where, like, if Atlanta made this kind of deal where, like, Giannis gets hurt and they lose in the first round and Jalen Johnson's putting up 30-point triple-doubles for 5 years in the Bucks jersey and Atlanta Hawks fans are just tortured forever. And so that's why I think it won't happen. But I think that there is a great natural basketball fit between Trae Young and Giannis. There was this failure with the Giannis-Dame pairing because Dame is not the same level of passer as Trae. He's not good at hitting the pocket. He didn't have pace in his pick and roll. It was very much like for the most part in that pairing, Dame would run action with Brook Lopez rather than Giannis because the pick and roll pairing just didn't really ever come to fruition the way it was supposed to. Trae Young, to me, is exceptionally gifted at hitting the pocket, at hitting rollers on lobs, at hitting baseline cutters, timing the attacks in his pick and roll to find openings. I think Trae and Giannis would be a beautiful basketball fit. And if they were to make that deal, they could still have Mohamed Gay. They could still have Dyson Daniels. They could still have Zachary Rissache. They could still have a lot of really talented role players. Nikhil Alexander-Walker, Vic Krejci. They could have all those guys around them still and have a legitimate championship contending roster. And I think the natural basketball fit would be fun to watch. I think out of all, like, strictly speaking duos, I think those two would be the most fun to watch.
It's an interesting one. Are there any part of you that wonders if it would look like the Dame thing? Giannis likes to do a lot of things on the court. I don't know if he wants to be a straight screen and roll guy, and I feel like that would probably be the best use of him alongside Trae. Is there any concern that it wouldn't work as well as you think?
I think that Giannis is yet to actually play with a pick and roll passer that has made him realize the benefits of doing it. And ultimately, to me, Dame and Trae are two very, very different basketball players.
They are. Yeah, for sure. I like that one. It wasn't top of my list. Mine is the obvious one that everybody's talking about, and I kind of wanted to get to it, which we just talked about the Spurs and are they contenders now? It's a possibility. But to me, if you have an opportunity to put Giannis and Wemby together, I don't know how anybody scores on that. And I don't think – sometimes I think of roster construction as how difficult it is it to build around, like your building blocks. I don't think it's that hard to build around those guys. You're going to have a number one defense in the NBA. If you have Giannis and Wemby, your defense is pretty much set. You still doesn't mean you put no, zero defense on the court around them, but you can afford some flexibility about what types of defenders you can put, or how strong a on-ball defender is when you have those two guys there. And then the offensive side, they're just so physically dominant. There's such a mismatch, that you're going to have specific types of personnel on the floor that to me, it's almost a no-brainer, and they have the assets to do it. Now, I know Spurs fans are enjoying their slow build right now, and the team's coming together, and I get it. But I would trade it all. If it were me personally, I would trade it all to say, you know what? We have the two toughest defensive matchups in the league on our team. We're not losing because of defense for the next however many years.
Yeah, so the reason why I didn't have this one number one is I don't necessarily think it would be the most aesthetically fun to watch duo. I just think it would be impactful on the basketball court. The main thing that would excite me about a Wemby Giannis pairing is the imposition they would present to a team like OKC. So
Yep.
the two of them would essentially be able to completely shut off the basket to a team like OKC. So if they completely shut off the basket, that suddenly turns them into kind of like a pull-up jump shooting team, which obviously they're very good at. But like you could get that deal done with like Harrison Barnes and Keldon Johnson and one of your young guards. Let's call it Dylan Harper just for the sake of argument. In that case, you still have De'Aaron Fox. You still have Julian Champagnie and Devin Vassell. You still have Steph Castle. That's a lot of really athletic big guards that can get good contests on those Shai Gilgeous-Alexander pull-up jump shots. That can get good contests on the J-Dub pull-up jump shots. And so, like, I think they would present a real problem to the Thunder. And as we talked about at the top of the show, it's very possible that they're on a tier by themselves as a runaway favorite this year. And I just think it'd be fun to have a team that like legitimately can present some real problems to them.
I think if we have a Thunder Spurs with Giannis and Wemby matchup over the next several years, the NBA might fold, because you remember those Pistons Spurs matchups where it was like 80 to 76. That matchup might be even lower. That might be a 55 to 61 series where it's like, man, nobody can score on these two teams.
OKC would have to get them in transition. It'd be like the only way they could score.
Only transition buckets, man. So I'm kind of rooting against it for the same reasons you are. But if you're just talking about would the pairing work, I just can't imagine it not working. As ugly and clunky as it might be, it just defensively would be so unbelievable. All right, who else?
So if I had to pick the best realistic option, and if I'm going to frame it as a duo, I'm just going to say Desmond Bane. But I think Orlando might be my favorite Giannis destination. And so hear me out.
There's no way he's going to Orlando, but okay.
He can't go west, because if he goes west, it's bad for the league. You can't have all four of your top tier superstars and all four of your top tier contenders playing out in the Western Conference. I don't like that for the health of the league. Atlanta, as we talked about, you don't want to break up a good thing they've got going on with Jalen Johnson and all those guys. The Knicks can't afford Giannis. I don't know how they pull that off unless there's some sort of shenanigans going on behind the scenes. What I like about Orlando is they've got this guy that doesn't seem to fit really well in what they're trying to do in Paolo Banchero. So, like, what I like when I look at that situation is, one, Milwaukee gets a bona fide blue chip superstar caliber prospect. Is Bane going to become that? I know you and I are lower on him than most, but he is still a very talented player in his early 20s that is barely scratching his potential, that Bucks fans would at least have to build around as they move into the future. And he plays a different position than Ryan Rollins, so they have like a nice little kind of core to start with as they rebuild, right? For the Magic, you take what is kind of a clunky fit in Paolo, and it's still a clunky-ish fit plugging in Giannis, but Giannis is just so much better than Paolo on both ends of the floor and adds yet again that physical element to what is already a great defense and what is already a great rebounding team. Giannis would just be a force multiplier there. I think there's good natural two-man game chemistry with Desmond Bane. I think if you're Orlando too, like, you've got this great team built around Franz and Anthony Black and a budding Wendell Carter Jr. And they've got enough to be excited about in-house that even if Giannis aged out in a couple of years or eventually left in free agency or whatever it is, they'd be okay. And in the moment, if they made that deal, Orlando overnight would become far and away the best team in the Eastern Conference, the runaway team to win the Eastern Conference, and they would present some real problems to whoever came out of the East or out of the West. I'd view them as a legitimate top tier championship contender.
The question is, would Milwaukee do that? What else does Orlando have to offer? What else do they throw in? But because I think it's so risky building around Banchero, as great as he is, does Milwaukee feel great about that going forward? I don't know. I do think one of the things you've talked about and brought to my attention was how poor Orlando is in a transition, despite their historically great defense, in previous seasons. Giannis would probably fix that. Forget coaching, forget
overnight.
anything else. Like all of a sudden now your defense is converting all those steals. And that might be a force multiplier of something they already do well. Get stops, get steals, but now those turn into baskets the other way. And now your offense is legit just because you're adding the transition game to it. So I like that one. I think it's interesting. I like that you factored in trying to not make the West too good, because there's a lot of I have a lot of West ideas over here.
We can't send Giannis West, man. We
Can't
do
they?
it.
Can't they? I've been saying
They're
the West
going
can't win.
to. I mean, San Antonio's got probably the best package to offer, right? I mean, but like, man.
Yeah. This is just like the NBA lottery. Every year I'm like, they can't be a team in the West getting the number one pick. It's one again.
Here we go again.
It's off every time. I think Jokic Giannis to me is another one. Like Denver can't punt on this season. And I don't think they could acquire him. I don't think they have the assets to get him anyway, but it would have to be something like Jamal Murray and you try to throw stuff out. I still don't think that's a great package, but you'd have to throw away this year. I just think Jokic and Giannis are yin and yangs. They're both dominant players and in ways that cover each other. And if you were able to pair them together, even at this stage, I still think it would be incredible and easy to build around.
Yeah, Giannis as low man behind Jokic would make that pick and roll coverage very much more imposing defensively. And like, I mean, you've seen the chemistry that Jokic just had with baseline cutters. He would do so much damage with Giannis on the baseline.
Another one I like, flag Wemby. I mean, is this one that you could entertain if that's of your building block? It seems to me like that would be a pretty interesting 3-4 combo.
Yeah, I like it. It's just, man. Yeah, I don't hate it. I just don't understand. It's similarly to what you were talking about with Orlando. I'm just not sure what Milwaukee would be wanting with a guy like Anthony Davis, for example.
Flagging Giannis, I said Wemby. Yeah, whoops.
Yeah, but flagging, I know what you meant. But yeah, flagging Giannis would be a fun one too, just because I think they could both play like a small ball lineup as the 4-5, but I think they both can also slot up to the 3-4. Because of how good of a passer Giannis has become to baseline cutters. Yeah, it'd be a fun one.
Is there anybody else you had on your list? I had some others, but they're just not that compelling.
Yeah, the big ones that I looked at were San Antonio, Orlando, Atlanta, New York. There's a Lakers one if they make it to the summer. And the main thing with that, and I think this is incredibly unlikely to happen. Although try telling that to Lakers fans, they just got Luka. But the thing with the Lakers is Austin Reeves is like a legitimate All-NBA player this season. So like if you're Milwaukee, you're theoretically getting like a blue chip superstar talent back in the deal. And if they waited till the summer, they could include 2 draft picks. The main reason why I'm not super high on that one, though, is I don't think there's a lot of natural fit between Giannis and Luka. I think they both get guarded by similar types of players, which would dictate teams switching that action. Now, if you're the Lakers and Rob Pelinka makes the call and the Bucks say yes, you certainly take Giannis because of the talent play, and he would just inevitably make you better just because he's Giannis. But I don't think there's as much natural synergy between Jokic and Giannis as there would be between Luka and Giannis as there would be between like Jokic or one of these guards that we've seen around the league.
Just to entertain this one step further, if you're Denver, you have a shot at the title this year. I think you have a very good team, some injuries, this or that. You don't have a ton of flexibility. If it was available to you, but you're kind of punting on this year because you're going to have to go into the offseason to rebuild and build your roster around it. Would it be worth punting on a age 30 and I think 2 guys in their age 30 seasons, punting on a year to start over and rebuild around them?
Yeah, probably not. And honestly, like, if I'm Denver, I still feel like I know it's been rough the last couple of weeks, but dudes have been out of the lineup and the defense has
they're
slipped
just not themselves.
because one of the things that I think is underrated about Aaron Gordon and Christian Brown in particular is they're athletes, but they're also really high IQ defenders. And there are some athletes for Denver on the bench that haven't been as good defensively because they're just not as like smart at like anticipating things and committing possession to the details. And I still think when Denver's healthy that they're the best puncher's chance team to beat OKC. That'd be difficult to punt on.
We might not see it for another 5 weeks, though, unfortunately, for Denver. They're just going to be hanging on for a thread for a while. All right, let's get to our FanDuels of the night. And this is just looking, of course, at the weekend, the slate of games. This is presented by FanDuel. Remember, you can get started with $150 in bonus bets. If you win your first $5 bet, use FanDuel.com/all-NBA. Super producer James put together a list of some games for us for over the weekend here. Friday, Nuggets at Hawks. Pretty good game. Lakers Celtics, always a fun matchup. Actually, really into that one. Lakers on a second night of a back-to-back. Celtics play last night? Did we mention that? I think
they played against Washington.
Yeah.
Jalen Brown sat out.
That's right. They kind of played.
Tony Walsh had a career night.
That's right. Heat Magic, Spurs Cavs, Suns Rockets. Not a bad little Friday slate. Suns Rockets would be a lot better with Devin Booker, man. That would have been a much more entertaining game.
I don't know, man. With Colin Gillespie playing as well as he's playing, and Dylan Brooks, the machine, Dylan Brooks, the deadly right shoulder fadeaway. I all those are good games, man. That's a slate right there.
Man, this is no knock on Dylan Brooks, who's been incredible. He has all of his moves are technically sound. They just don't look right. But he's one of the best ISO players in the NBA this year. But his movements just look like a football player using Michael Jordan's footwork. And you're like, man, he's
the football player at the rec center that like actually has a little bit of polish on his game.
Exactly. But the polish doesn't look as polished. I don't know what it is. All right, bring that back up again. Let's look at Saturday's slate. We got Warriors at Cavs, Bucks at Pistons, Rockets, Mavs, and then on Sunday, Magic, Knicks. Saturday slate a little bit weaker. Sunday, although let's watch this Dallas Mavericks team. Maybe if they get a win against the Rockets, it's on for real. And then
Rockets Mavs is a good game. That's a fun one there. Yeah.
And Rockets will be on a second night of a back-to-back, so maybe you catch them there. But if they get that win, it's like, all right. This is why I want to be early on the Mavs. I'm telling everybody, here it is, a 3-game win streak. They get that one, I think people will be talking.
Yeah, and Anthony Davis, I thought he outplayed Bam. I thought he went toe-to-toe with Jokic in that game, gave him some real problems shooting over the top and on the offensive glass when Jokic would help on drives. And I think Anthony Davis going toe-to-toe with Şengün and beating him. AD has given Şengün issues over the years. He's been a guy who's guarded him really well.
There you go. Hit that outro music. I know we have a couple super chats there, James, but what do we got? From JK, he says, Jason, as a Denverite now, will you ever root for the Nuggets over the Lakers? Enjoy the snow. Cheers. Come on.
I enjoy rooting for the Nuggets. I think we talked about it earlier. I just think they're such a fun team to watch, but it's going to have to be after LeBron retires, my guy.
Oh, after LeBron retires. Unbelievable, man. Only 8 points last night. Just couldn't get it done in the scoring department. Locked up. Everybody, thanks so much for tuning in. We appreciate you hanging with us all week. We're going to have Mark Stein over the weekend. And make sure you're subscribed. You catch Tim Legler, you catch Jason Timpf, you catch Mark Stein, and of course you catch me 4 times a week. Hit that like button for us on the way out. Have a great weekend.
Silly like the mayor.